Hi and welcome to Simcha, a celebration of life. I'm your host, Aaron Halevi. The Shabbat Project is a South African Jewish initiative which has spread its wings across the globe. The project aims to unite all Jews to keep one full Shabbat together. The idea originated in South Africa in 2013 as an initiative of the Chief Rabbi's Office and has grown to 212 cities in 33 countries around the world. In celebration of the project, which will take place on the Shabbat of the 24th of October this year, Cantor Hershtik and the Maccabeets join the world in making Havdalah.
הנה כל ישועתי, הבטח ולא אפחד, כי עוזי וזמרתך השם, ויהי לי ישועה, ושאבתם מים בששון. ברוך אתה
Rabbi Doniel Katz is an internationally sought-after speaker and teacher. His mission is to reveal the unity among different paths of Torah in order to allow all Jews to experience its spiritual depth, beauty, and transformative power. He believes that the Jewish philosophy of love is not about give and take, but rather about giving.
One of the great sages, Rabbi Dessler, in the last 100 years, he talks about the most transformative act a person can do for their own life, for their own consciousness, is learn to become a giver and not a taker. Right? Is to learn not just a single action, but an attitude, a philosophy, a Weltanschauung of giving, of chesed. And he says at any given moment, a person basically falls into a duality. At any given moment, are you giving or are you taking? And the goal of spiritual development, he says, if a person would simply focus on that duality and ask themselves at any given moment, am I giving or taking, that itself could create a massive, is a massive catalyst for extraordinary change. Now, I was teaching in a seminary in Jerusalem for many years, and whenever you say this, I would say this into a room of many women who are listening, and for better or for worse, I'm extremely sensitive to my audience. I can feel and sense what they're thinking and what they're feeling. And what I found is every time I would say that, it's important to be a giver and to give beyond yourself, I would feel this unbelievable anxiety come over. I mean, I was tuned into the audience, because when you have a bunch of women in the room, one of the things that women experience very deeply, a frustration in their own life. If I were to ask you right now, who's more of a giver, a man or a woman? So most people would respond, right? If anyone's actually been in a relationship, ever in all of history, unfortunately, for better or for worse, men have an aspect of being selfish, and there's a deep reason why that is. And women have an aspect of sometimes giving and giving too much and giving beyond themselves and then getting hurt. So at least at the beginning, you say women will deeply, resonate with this idea of giving, but there's this incredible tension that comes up for women when they hear this truth, right? About it's important to be giver. Now, women often go, yes, and then they also go, ugh, and I could feel this tension. And if you explore the tension, there's a profound subtlety in there. There's one woman that stood up, she said, Rabbi, you can give and you can give and you can deplete yourself and hurt yourself to that point. So, Rav Dessler is basically saying, commit emotional suicide. Not that he is, but that's what it sounds like. And it's a very real question, and I am very excited about real questions. So there's a deeper insight here from Rav Dessler. There's two kinds of givings. And the assumption he's basically saying is the right kind of giving is invigorating, is empowering. You feel connected to something greater with love, right? And the wrong kind of giving is some kind of self-abuse. It's hurtful, it's depleting, it can destroy you, it can destroy your relationship. So what's the distinction? And the distinction is very profound, that there's a giving which is truly a giving, and there's a giving that's a form of a taking. And there's a taking that's truly a taking. And then there's a taking that's a form of a giving. And what you often find where people are depleted by their taking, spiritually, emotionally, what you find is, I'm not here to judge, I'm not judging anyone, I'm just saying we're exploring ourselves. And there's many exceptions to the rule as I talk this out. That when a person is depleted by giving, often what they find is they're not truly giving, they're taking. And sometimes the way that people take is, I want love, and I want attention, and I want your approval, and I'm going to be there for you, and you can hurt me 25 times, I'm still going to be there for you. And it's not really coming from a giving place, it's coming from a needing place. And it's a giving in order to take. And a lot of women that get hurt by giving, it's true, it's because they wanted something in return. It could be something they deserve or something that they didn't deserve. It's just a reality. Not that this doesn't happen to men as well, but because women have a more kind by nature, they can be more vulnerable to abuse in that. But there's a flip. There's also a taking, which is a form of a giving. If my son, 4-year-old son, comes to me and says, Tati, Abba, Father, look at this nice, coffee mug I made for you in school, and he comes and it's made of clay, and the clay's bent over and there's holes in the bottom. So I can look and say, what kind of terrible piece of junk this is? What am I going to do with this? And I can also say, sino matanas yichia. Our sages say that a person, it says in Tanakh, our sages say that a person should not want gifts. A person should push away gifts. I want to be a rabbi. Rabbi, I'm moved by your class. Let me write you a check. Oh, great, fantastic. Now I can buy that car. If a person's doing it for the other person, truly giving, I don't want to receive, and I don't want to train myself to want gifts. So I could say to my son, I don't want a gift from you because I want to care for you for the right reasons, not to get benefit. Or I could say, what kind of disgusting present is this, right? But sometimes we receive in order to give. Because obviously I'm not taking this because I want a mug, I'm taking this because I want to acknowledge and validate the beauty and love that my child poured into this. So sometimes we take as a form of giving. And sadly, sometimes we give, which is really a form of taking. I'm giving you this so that you'll adore me, you'll approve of me, you'll feel I'm your savior because I need validation. So the true giving is when I give beyond myself. Giving beyond myself does not mean I deplete, I give to you till I get your adoration. It means I give from a place that goes higher than my need for adoration. And that is the concept of giving, the concept of chesed, the concept of unity, the concept of transcending self to bond and unite with another, to see another needs before I see my own. Right? To achieve that, ironically, sometimes the mystics say to achieve one spiritual goal, we have to go in the opposite direction. There's many women, of course this occurs with men as well, I just use that as an example. There's many women that actually, to learn how to truly give, they have to learn to not give for a period of time. They have to learn to create boundaries, gvulim, borders, to know the limits of their giving, to strengthen themselves. Sometimes you have to overcome your needs by not giving, to work in the opposite direction, as the Rambam will say, so that once I'm in a place of, once I have the capacity to say no, then I can have the capacity to choose. Okay. And that's a very deep idea. If I have the capacity to say no, then I have capacity to say choose. If you feel compelled to give to everyone all the time, then perhaps it's not coming from a true objective place. That also takes development and mastery. So giving in the ultimate sense is to see that there's a connection between all beings. I'll say a little Torah for you to consider. The father of giving, the father of the Jewish people, is Abraham, our forefather. And Abraham had many different key traits. It's a very profound idea. Abraham was the founder of ethical monotheism. He was the first person to say there's one God. And we also know another trait that he was incredible giver, incredible kindness. Right? Another place that he had was, another power that he had was the strength of emunah, of faith. Right? Now, if you saw Abraham's business card, you could say, faith, giver, founder, ethical monotheism, CEO, ethical monotheism, industries, etc. The mystics always say that when you have multiple ideas, they're often different refracted versions of the same core idea. So what's the connection between these three ideas? So I'll tell you something I heard which is very beautiful and very moving. A rabbi of mine said, Abraham did not say there was one God, because the truth is at that time, many paths, many religions all said there's one God. Even when they said, I'm worshiping the sun, I'm worshiping the tree, they all had that there's only one God. And they said, these are just different ways that God's light comes into the world, that they acknowledge the power within that. But he said it was an obvious idea that there was only one God at that time. Abraham's vision, his awakening, his spiritual clarity, the revelation was there's not only one God, but everything is one God. Everything is unified together. Everything is an expression and revelation, are completely inculcated in real time with the whole. And therefore, once you see and acknowledge, not just intellectually, like sometimes we do, as religious people, we get very intellectual about beliefs, but you experience that in your heart and your being, and you feel that pumping through your veins. Then everything you look at, you see as one. Now that means if you're walking through the desert and you're thirsty, I don't go, well, I hope it turns out for her, I hope she gets a drink. Suddenly I am feeling your thirst, because you and I are one. And the ultimate depth of kindness does not come of, I need to have some social responsibility. It comes from an awareness and a consciousness that says, we are so bound together, how can I not act? If this hand hurts, this hand doesn't say, well, I need to put a band-aid on it to be compassionate. That is part of myself working together. So the consciousness of the whole world being unified, that everything being a revelation of infinite unity, means of course I have a responsibility for you, because I actually don't see that you and I are separate. And that is the true Torah definition of emunah, which doesn't mean faith. Faith means a rational belief, basically, if you look it up in the dictionary. Faith is the conceptual awareness, the experiential awareness of the unity in all things. Even when I'm suffering, having a bad day, things aren't going right, I realize this is just part of a process of higher revelation, of deeper going into myself to pull out something deep and profound. And every aspect in the challenging situation is set up to reveal the highest light and clarity in my life. And therefore, the concept of Abraham, he was a soul of unity that revealed unity, that spoke the language of unity. And all of Torah and mitzvahs are about really how to shift our perception from a physical world to see the unity in all things. That's why we're deeply engaged in the physical world, in money, in having families, in houses, and being, solid at eating. We're not parish, we're not separate from that, because the goal is ultimately to be miyached shamayim va'aretz, to unify heaven and earth, to unify consciousness and heart and body, and unify them together. So the concept of kindness, when we do kindness on a basic level, I don't know you, but I want to be kind. I want to be socially responsible. I'm going to push myself to give that, money to pick you up. But the truth is, if you saw who that person really was, that you are one and the same, you wouldn't have to motivate yourself. It would be a natural expression, an extension of your perception of truth, a perception of unity. And that's the depth of kindness. Kindness becomes a perception of true unity in the world. The word ahava, love, is numerical value 13, which is the same numerical value as the word echad, one. Through perceiving the unity of all things, the oneness of all things, automatically my heart loves and connects. Fear is basically the separation, the perception that you and I are opposites, and that we have to overcome the self to see the unity, and through the unity we naturally give. We naturally give from that place. That's the power of chesed.
Welcome back. Rabbi Taub is the author of the best-selling book, God of Our Understanding, Jewish Spirituality and Recovery from Addiction. He was also one of the guest speakers at the recently held Sinai in Daba. Here he shares some of his thoughts on the complex issue of addiction.
All addiction is essentially an inability to function within reality. The self-medication, the particular drug of choice, is almost irrelevant. In practice, actually, as far as recovery, it is irrelevant. And a person doesn't even have to self-medicate with a drug. We can self-medicate with rage, with fear, with resentment, with emotional toxins that sort of take us out of the here and now. And what they all have in common is an inability to function as an adult, to make decisions, to be responsible, and to be at peace in the moment, in the present reality. So recovery really means, for all people, I think it's a universal condition. I think it's something that all people struggle with. Recovery means to be able to feel that I'm where I need to be, with the people I need to be with, doing the activity I need to be doing for right now. It has meaning, it has significance. I don't need to put myself somewhere else. I don't have to numb myself. I don't have to make a buffer between me and reality. I can be present in the moment. And to me, that's a spiritual awakening. The idea that God is creating the moment, that reality has significance because there's an author of reality. That reality is an intimate relationship with the Creator. So really what we're talking about when we're talking about spirituality is, or at least the litmus test of spirituality, is one's success in being present and functioning as a responsible adult in the here and now. Recovery is a spiritual awakening. It's a relationship with God. But it's a particular relationship with God. In other words, there can be a relationship with God which is an addiction in and of itself, where my God concept is there to justify my actions. It's the ultimate rationalization. It's the ultimate self-justification. And not only have I self-justified, but with righteous indignation, because of course I have license from God to fight these battles. So we're not just talking about invoking God as a word. What we're talking about is humility. We're talking about surrender. We're talking about the ability to embrace our imperfections and to be a humble child of God. So it's a particular type of relationship. And essentially what defines it is God here for me, or am I here for God? Is God some butler in the sky? Or is there some sort of obligation that my existence in itself implies that I'm here to be of use, to be of service, that I was given a certain amount of years, months, days, hours, minutes, seconds, and that I'm supposed to use that time to leave my mark, to do something, to contribute something. So a God relationship that leads to entitlement is just another form of addiction. a relationship with God that is humbling, that makes me live in a constant state of service. That's the spiritually healthy, and emotionally, it happens to also be emotionally and mentally healthy. That's the state that we're talking about. When you're raising a child, they can have all the comforts and all the luxuries in the world, but if they don't have meaning, they don't have a purpose, they don't think that their life matters in the grand scheme of things, that all the material comforts in the world don't amount to anything. So what we're really talking about is a relationship with God in which it's a one-on-one relationship. God isn't just this distant power, this creator, this original force, but it's a dynamic relationship, and it's a one-on-one relationship, a personal relationship where my deeds matter, my choices have cosmic ramifications. And the void of that, the absence of that, essentially, is complete self-absorption, which is that the world is here to serve me, and spirituality merely means I am here to be of service in the world. That shift from the default setting of self-consciousness and being self-centered, which is the survival mode of every baby, but trying to grow up and becoming an adult and shifting from self to others, ultimately to big picture, to God, to seeing unity and oneness, and moving beyond my own comforts, my own needs, and instead of trying to live to get what I need, to live for what I'm needed for.
In chapter 2, verse 4 of Ethics of Our Fathers, Hillel is quoted as saying, "Do not separate yourself from the community. Do not believe in yourself until the day you die. Do not judge your fellow until you have stood in his place. Do not say something that ought not to be heard, even under the strictest of confidence, for ultimately it will be heard. And do not say, when I free myself of my concerns, I will study. For perhaps you will never free yourself." That's all we have for this week's episode of Simcha, a celebration of life. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so please send us a message on Facebook at Spirit Sister Productions. From me, Aaron Halevi, and the Simcha team, have a great week.